Good day everyone, my name is Jocel Rama and this is my PowerPoint presentation to the answer of the six questions in BTE SS1, which is competency-based assessment 1. So for question number 1, how does competency-based learning contribute to the success of teachers' teaching process? So competency-based learning, it helps the teachers to guide and instruct the students in the learning process. So the teacher personalizes each student phase learning in order for them to meet their own strength for the learning processes. It may sound really hard to track everyone's progress in the classroom, but this method of learning process or learning base is very effective because it focuses on each individual skills and abilities so that the teachers can identify easily where each student's weaknesses and strengths. So the teacher will help the student to explore the set of goals or maybe engage in more direct instruction with a few students at a time. So the teacher are only to guide in this learning processes. The teachers are only to guide and plan on the activities that the students will tackle on. So by identifying each student's weaknesses and strengths, the teachers will be aware where and what methods will be he or she use to address the weaknesses and strength of its students. So that's all for the answer of number 1 question. Question number 2. Can you give one scenario where you can apply competency-based approach in your ICT class? So basically, as a BTE student, we are major in information and communication technology. So as an ICT teacher, so here's a scenario where I can apply the competency-based assessment. So example scenario is the lesson for ICT students is about creating program. For example, the lesson for ICT student is about creating program using codes. So instead of letting the students perform the task by just letting them read the lessons or the handouts, aside from that, instead of that, the teacher must demonstrate and explain the process of making the entire program. Basically, the explaining how to use the codes, the proper use of codes. So after the teacher demonstrate the entire program with the codes, teacher must let the student perform the task or perform the problem or program for them to know and be aware on how to do and execute the program coding properly. So basically, that's the teacher in this process will be the guide, will only be the guide of the students of their learning process. So if ever there's an error in making their programs, the teacher will guide also the students, and the student will just call the attention of the teacher, and the teacher will feedback and give their advice and give their knowledge in order for the student to perform their task. So for question number 3, being a teacher, what are the things that you need to do if a student cannot demonstrate a task or competency? So as a teacher, I must think about the particular student flows and strength. The more we will be able to guide him or her in the right way. So we must first acknowledge or identify the particular weaknesses and strength of the students for us to be guided on what we will going to do in order for the student to perform the task well. So if understand we must understand the core problem, because there there may be times that the reason for the student in not performing well in their task or in a demonstration, it may be because it may be anything like friends, family, society, food, sanitation, health, or any personal condition that might be the reason for them not to perform well in class. So we all know that our environment really affects our own personal personal, especially as a student. uh, as a student, we must, as a teacher also, we must understand the capability of the student, because they are being affected by their environment also. So that's all for number 3. So for question number 4, how CBE differs to outcome-based education. So competency is CBE is the ability of students or graduate to demonstrate capabilities in knowledge, skills, and behavior in a STEM setting. Therefore, the training and the curriculum is developed in a way that addresses these issues. But basically, both of these learning process is very effective, and it is based on how the student understand each learning process, and also it matters on how the teacher will demonstrate or illustrate both of this learning process. So that's all for question number 4. So for question number 5, based on your discussion, explain in your own how CBE differs to the traditional education in terms of grading system, structure, and its learning outcomes. So before we tackle in grading system, I must discuss first based on instruction. So in traditional education, every classroom has only one teacher, and only one teacher who designs and delivers instructional program with every little differentiation. While in CBE, educators work collaboratively with community partners and students to develop a unique learning plan for each student based on their own interests, learning needs, and real-time data. And in grading system in traditional education, grades are norm, reference, reflect course standards. These are typically based on weighted quarters and final exams. While in CPE, grades reflect the degree of mastery of competencies. If the students do not earn course credit, records indicate competencies that the student need to be learned instead of their entire course. And if we tackle about the culture of this learning processes, so in traditional learning, it happens inside the traditional classroom only, and little to no accommodation of student interest of learning needs. While in CBE, students have an equitable range of learning experience in school, online, just like what happened now in our society, in our community, that we students are having our class online. So this is applied in CBE, because this is not what happened, or this does not happen before in a traditional setting of education. So basically, this traditional and CBE have different learning processes, but in a way that the student understand the lessons in each processes. both of these learning processes gives the student knowledge, but based on my own opinion, CBE is more accessible and very useful in the learning process of each and every student. So for question number 6, explain this passage by Ruta Stein. Competency-based learning focuses on the mastery of skills by articulating clear learning outcomes and ensuring that the students are supported to achieve these outcomes. So, CB aims to reflect how people or students learn, work, and success in the world in this modern or in this real world. Having clear learning outcomes means that you have a meaningful and positive learning experience. So it will help the student in the future to reach on the standard of the job aspect that addresses the skills gap at work. It can produce efficient and reliable people that is needed in that real world situation. So this means that the CBE learning process will spend much more time working on those skills until they completely master the whole learning process, and mastering skills can help the learners or the student to identify where are the areas that they are interested and perform well. So in addition, CBE learning processes is more on actual processes, and this is not just through theoretical learning process, but the theory is applied personally, so that the engagement of the student is the engagement of the student in the school is not different from the real world when they go to the outside school, where they perform their duties or jobs respectively. So that's all for my answer in number 6. So this is the end of my PowerPoint presentation. Thank you for listening, and God bless us all.